I wonder how many attorneys WebEx used to come up with that.
Yeah. You have to let people know they're being recorded.
Yeah. Hey, MJS 2060 public relations students. I am interviewing a great acquaintance of mine, a person I have a ton of respect for, longtime public relations, marketing communications practitioner, Jennny Febbo. And Jenny, I don't want to blow it. Is it senior VP or VP of
It's
integrated?
just Vice President, Integrated Communications.
Vice President, Integrated Communications at a place we both know and love quite well, and students you should too, Cuyahoga Community College. So, Jenny, thanks for being with us today.
Sure, my pleasure. I'm happy to be here.
Could you, and again, we've talked before, you've had a career as long as mine, 40 years plus, let's just say. Could you kind of summarize? Yeah.
How can that be? How can that be?
Can you kind of summarize what your career steps have been?
Sure. Well, starting out all the way back, I majored in journalism when I was in college. And during that time, just because within the School of Journalism at Duquesne, which is where I went in Pittsburgh, advertising and public relations were within that area. So I sort of gravitated over to advertising and public relations. And then I went to the business school and took some courses in marketing and found that I really liked all of those different forms of writing and sort of gravitated more towards that area. So when I was in my senior year, I did an internship with a small advertising agency in Pittsburgh, and they offered me a job. So I took it when I graduated. So I started out working in an advertising agency where I wrote mostly broadcast spots, but some print advertising for everything ranging from donuts to home insulation to automotive dealerships. I mean, just all sorts of different clients. I worked there for about a year, and then I moved to Cleveland, and I got a job working at Penton, what was then Penton Publishing, which was one of the largest trade publishing companies in the world at that time. It's now Penton Media. And I started out as the low person and only woman in the marketing department, and worked there for 16 and a half years. And when I left, I was the highest ranking communications person in the company. I was director of corporate communications, and I reported directly to the CEO. From there, I went to Ernst & Young, which is one of the, I believe it's still the big four professional services firms. Worked there for 13 years, and I had a lot of different jobs there, ranging from marketing to public relations. I worked across probably 11 different industry groups and communicated and promoted the firm's services in accounting, tax, and advisory to clients around the world. So I got an experience there of working not just on a national level, but on a global scale as well. So that was really a very interesting time.
Plus, if you don't know, Ernst & Young is a huge player in this field. And at that time, at least, and maybe still, they're headquartered in Cleveland.
Yeah, no, headquarters might even be in London now. The headquarters moved to New York. I'm not sure if it was while I was there. No, it was before I joined. The headquarters were in New York. I think now they might be in London, but I'm not sure.
New York, London.
Yeah. And I got to work in both, so that was fun. So when I left Ernst & Young, I did like a complete 180. So I went from this global firm that had enough employees to qualify for a small country to a hyper local economic development organization here in Cleveland. It's called Team Neo, that had at the time probably 25 employees on a good day. So that was very interesting, working very much at a local level and becoming really enmeshed in the economic development world. My job there was to promote Northeast Ohio to the rest of the world, basically, to try to convince other companies that were in expansion mode to locate in Northeast Ohio. My other
relocate, maybe if they were looking for a new headquarters, right?
That was some of it, yes. If that was an instance, yes, we would do that as well. Those types of things tended to be handled more on the state level if there was a headquarters switch, and we played more of a supporting role. So we took more of the lead on the expansion types of things. But my other important role there, maybe even more important, was communicating all of the great things about Northeast Ohio to Northeast Ohio so that everyone in the region could be a good brand ambassador and salesperson for Northeast Ohio. And because we were a nonprofit organization and we had members, I was also involved in communicating the value of the organization to our members. From there, I went to a higher ed association, which was a national organization, and had a similar role to what I had at Team Neo, where a lot of the marketing was around recruiting members, helping them understand the value of the organization. We did a lot of lobbying there on issues in higher education. And from there, I came to Tri-C, where I have been for the past 4 years, very happily running the integrated communications department.
Has it been 4 years already?
It's been, yeah, it was 4 years in October.
Wow.
Yes, I know, time flies, right? I can't believe it either.
You lose track so fast.
So I have to apologize. My allergies are acting up again today. Sorry.
You don't need to apologize, Jenny. I've had this as my constant companion for like 4 or 5 days.
Oh,
And
usually don't have to deal with it this time
true
of year.
stories, right? I wouldn't be making it without the honey.
Honey, that is good. Yes, local honey.
Things like that. And it is Great Lakes.
There you go.
Jenny, what's been the 3 or 4 biggest lessons, so to speak, you've learned thus far in your career?
I think probably the biggest one is you have to be willing to step outside of your comfort zone and take on tasks that you might not feel 100% grounded in. There have been a lot of times in my career when a door has opened or I've been pushed through a door to do something that I didn't know how to do. And you can't always wait until you feel like you have everything, 100% that you need. Sometimes you just have to go for it and learn as you're going along. I think most of the things that people would give me credit for being good at are things that at one point in time in my career, I didn't have any idea how to do. But someone took a chance on me or there was an opportunity and I stood up and said I would do that. And then I learned as I was doing it. So I think that's really an important thing to know when you're starting out is, sometimes it's okay to fake it until you make it. Everybody does it. And if you don't do it, you're probably not going to grow.
Probably won't make it.
Yeah. I think another thing is, when you're in a communications or PR role, there are going to be times when you need to make recommendations or you need to be that voice of dissent or inquiry in the room. And before you can do that, you need to have really done your research. You need to know your material, and the rationale for why you're pushing back has to be grounded in something. Because if it's not, then you're just viewed as a naysayer or someone who's standing in the way of progress. So I think it's really important that you understand the issues thoroughly and you're able to articulate why you think going in a certain direction or not going in a certain direction could be a problem for the organization or the group that you're working for. And that's not something...
Quick aside, if you're in one of those meetings class and you can start with the words research shows or evidence demonstrates, you instantly gain a bit more credibility and people will pay more attention to you.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I think you have to have a tough skin and you have to be able to kind of step back and be objective about things, because unlike some other professions, a lot of people think that they know how to do this work, or even if they don't know how to do it, they have very, very strong opinions about how it should be done and how it should be executed and what it should look like and the words that you should use. So you have to be able to listen to that and then come back with questions, to sort of, kind of either dissect or understand or be able to redirect that somehow. So I think those are probably my top three.
Very good. What are three or four of the most important things that integrated communications the department does at Tri-C? Things that maybe students might not even think about that are pretty important.
So integrated communications operates as like the in-house agency at Tri-C. So much like an agency, we have, I believe, 8 or 9 people. Their titles are marketing communications manager, but they actually function like an account executive would in an agency. And their job is to go out and work with all of the people across Tri-C and help them create plans and strategies in order to achieve their objectives. So I think that's a really very important function is, understanding what are we trying to do here? What do we want people to think, feel, say, or do as a result of our communication? And then what's the best way to do that? They then bring that work back into the department or the agency where we have a number of functional specialists who then help to execute the plans and the tactics. So we have people who do advertising, public relations, media relations, website, social media, design, copy editing, brand management, visual identity. So all of those things, and I'm sure I probably forgot someone or something in that mix because we do a lot of different things. But to answer your question, John, I think probably the thing that we do that is most important is the brand and reputation management. Because if you don't have a strong brand and you don't have a good reputation, it's pretty hard to do anything else. And we're very fortunate here at Tri-C because the college does have a strong brand, a very well-known brand, and it's a very trusted brand. Most people like Tri-C, have good things to say about the college, have a good feeling about it. But managing that and making sure that the things that we're doing, that the things that we're saying align with what people believe about us, and that when they come here, they have an experience that pays off that brand promise, because it's very important that, once you get someone through the door, that their experience matches up with what you've told them it will be. So I think that's probably the most important thing we do, because without that, you really have nothing.
Before I forget, if you don't mind me interjecting real
Sure.
quick, because I knew this from before you had joined us even. We have one of the best themes, one of the best kind of taglines that anybody has in higher education. And it was a ton of research that got us that. I'm talking about the words "where futures begin." And you didn't say those words, but you did. When you were explaining it, you kind of explained that paying off on the promise, and that's what we're kind of alluding to.
Exactly.
But class, I want to make sure you get this, because this is very important, and this is something that I'm sure Jennny learned at the beginning of her first agency assignment. I learned it with my first agency assignment. You have account executives who basically talk to the client, understand the client's needs, understand the client's marketing goals, whatever they are, and take them back to the agency. And then in the agency, you have a team of creative types.
Mm-hmm.
Writers, could be videographers, could be social media people
Right.
nowadays, could be advertising executives who understand advertising really well, but all these specialists who then kind of take the concepts and put them into reality. And in public relations and in marketing communications, you could be working on either side of that. You could be on the account service side, or you
Right.
could be on the creative side. So depending on your personality bent and your character and the way you enjoy interacting with people or being a creative person, there could be a role for you almost no matter what your personality type is, in my opinion.
Right. And I think it's also important to understand that, especially in my team, and I've found this in other areas too, it's not always, a complete division. So some of my, account executives are really good at social media or who have had jobs in the past where they have worked in social media. Some of them are good at media relations. Some of them are just really good, really strong writers. So there's a lot of cross-pollinating that goes on there, and it's not always a one-to-one. Even though we have people dedicated to those roles, it doesn't mean that one group can't have those skills. And in fact, I would say it benefits them greatly to have those skills, actually.
To be multi-talented is a plus, absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
What are 3 or 4 of the biggest challenges you faced in your time at Tri-C?
Well, I think COVID, of course, is going to have to top the list just because, things changed so quickly and required so much communication, and we had to adapt even how we were communicating with people because we weren't able to gather in these big meetings anymore. So that and just the rapid change and the fear and the great unknown that went along with that. So certainly COVID has to be the biggest challenge that we've had. And then I think, on the other side, it's the return from COVID. So as we're coming back in and we're reacclimating into more of a hybrid work environment, which is vastly different from when you have everybody on ground or when you have everybody remote. Now we've got people who are in both areas, and being able to communicate with them and connect with them. The other thing, and this is kind of COVID related, but not specifically, was certainly, the drop that we saw in enrollment and how we've had to think about our marketing and our messaging and how we are delivering those messages to those audience has shifted, I think, due to COVID. So I think those have been the biggest challenges. And then, of course, this wasn't necessarily a challenge, but it was certainly a heavy lift, was the resignation, or the retirement, I should say, the retirement of Alex Johnson, our past president, and then going through the search process for a new president, hiring that new president, onboarding that and all of the communications that go along with that. Wasn't necessarily a challenge, but it was a lot of work, and it was a really heavy lift for me and my department.
It also is an interesting study in contrast, because Alex Johnson and Dr. Michael Baston are 2 different personalities.
Vastly
and 2
different.
approaches to
Yes,
things.
absolutely.
So that put some, I don't know if I'd use the word pressure, but certainly some wrinkles and challenges in integrated communications for Tri-C.
Yes, yes.
And-
And
yeah.
Dr. Baston is much more, I think, video oriented and social media oriented. So Dr. Johnson was not much into those things at all. So that's, just another, a shift and an increase in the volume of those types of communications for the president.
Or to use older school terms that we used to say, Dr. Johnson was more of a hands-off. Dr. Baston's more of a hands-on.
Very much,
In terms
yes.
of their approach. Yeah, so absolutely. And class, you won't know this, but I do, because I was here. Jennny Febbo and her team were basically behind a regular communication that went out to every person in Tri-C every week during the time of the COVID pandemic. And there were other groups that were putting out regular communications as well, but hers was at the highest level, because hers was basically coming through Dr. Johnson's office and saying, from an administrative perspective, here's how we're adjusting the things. And I'm not kidding you. She actually was putting out emails every day talking about the number of COVID cases,
Yep.
where they were, and all of that. So it was a very high demand period for integrated communications, right?
Sure was. I do not miss that.
Over I hate to say this word, right? Over the decades,
Yes.
you and I have both seen kind of a decline in the role of the traditional media, newspapers especially, but radio, TV, others. And we've seen a rise in the influence of social media. in terms of PR and communication. How has that changed your roles and responsibilities? And what advice might you have for junior PR practitioners who might want to be a senior PR practitioner with respect to social media?
Yeah. So yeah, certainly there have been a lot of changes. Some not so good. Some I think are really good. I'll start with the good. So I think now we have a lot more opportunities to tell our own story and manage our own narrative than we did in the past. So, we have social media, we have websites, we have YouTube. So there are a lot of opportunities to get our story out to our audience. And we also have the opportunity to tap into influencers in the community and have them tell the story and be able to amplify that message. So those were things that, back when John and I were starting out, didn't exist. I mean, you had very limited, compared to what we have now, much more limited ways to get your story out about your organization. And a lot of that was through traditional media. So the challenges and some of the bad things that I think that are happening there that make it a little more challenging is, newsrooms are shrinking and people so they don't have reporters now who are really specialists in certain areas. I mean, some of the media do, but a lot don't anymore. So you are in a position where you are constantly educating a reporter about what you do because they're not going to come to you in many cases with an understanding. So you're educating them in addition to trying to tell your story. And I think, the 24-hour news cycle has also put pressure on journalists to get the story out fast. So that means there is not as much fact checking.
Speed over accuracy.
Yeah, I mean, it's speed over accuracy. Get the story out, and oops, if we made a mistake, we'll pull it back later. But unfortunately, if you're an organization and they got the message out wrong, that's what gets out there first, and it's hard to pull that message back once people have already seen it. And that makes your job as a PR practitioner or media relations practitioner that much more difficult. Having to go back to them and asking them to make a correction or give as much emphasis to the correction as they gave to the original story.
There's a saying that Jennny and I both know, class, if it's an adverse situation where something negative is appearing in the news media about you and it's completely untrue, the retraction or the correction will never catch up to the original charge. It's good to have that correction and that retraction, but you're going to have to do a lot of mitigating things to make up for that, irrespective of what the media does that says, oops, I made a mistake.
Yeah. And that's where, going back to my first point, having all of those other options available to you now that we didn't have before. So now you can put a video from your CEO or your president out on YouTube or out on social media or on your web page that addresses and counters the misinformation that was out in the media. So it's a good news, bad news situation.
And class, keep this in mind because pretty soon you're going to be looking at the Dove case study when some stuff came out about Dove and how that company reacted to it. And I would encourage you very strongly to take a look at that and understand what Jennny Febbo is discussing here, because that's a good example. Hey, last point.
Yeah.
I'll call it the younger me point.
Younger me.
Suppose you could go back to Jennny Febbo at Duquesne University. Or you could talk one-on-one to the students in my class now, and some of them are as young as 16 or 17. A couple of them are 28, 30, already have a college degree, but are kind of like looking for a different career right now. What advice might you give to them?
And this would definitely be advice that I would give to Jennny back in her Duquesne. And I'll tell you a little story first before I explain what it is. So when I first went to Duquesne, I mentioned I majored in journalism. And it was because I wanted to be the next Barbara Walters. That was my goal. God love her. She just passed away. And so I got there and I got myself a job at the college radio station. We didn't have a television station, so I got a job at the radio station, and over time managed to get myself an afternoon news show and interview show. And what I discovered was I wasn't particularly good at asking questions and interviewing people. So I believed that I just didn't have that talent to do that, to ask questions and interview people. So that's when I began that shift into advertising and PR and marketing. And if I could go back and talk to little Jennny, I would tell her, interviewing people is a skill like anything else. It's not necessary. I mean, for some people, I think it is a God-given talent. In my case, it wasn't. But the advice I would give you is, if something doesn't feel natural to you, or you don't feel like it comes easily to you, you just need to learn how to do it. And if I could go back, I would have gone to people at the radio station who were good at doing interviews and saying, how do you do that? Help me understand how you do that. I mean, I think there's a book out there somewhere now called The Art of the Interview, and I can't remember who wrote it, but you probably know, John.
Off the top of my head.
Yeah, or, I would have, I mean, it just, at the time, that was how I internalized that. Now, fast forward, many years later, I've since, by the way, gotten over that whole thing about asking people questions. I'm actually pretty good at it now. And at one point when I was working at Ernst & Young, I actually had a partner complain about me because I asked too many questions. So that would be my advice to you. If it doesn't feel natural or you don't get it right away, seek out people who you think are good at it. You have the internet now where you can Google things, and I think there's a for dummies on just about every subject out there.
Name it, it's there, yeah.
Yeah. So just, keep working at it, keep pushing. You'll get there, and you'll get better at it.
Jennny, if you don't mind, I'm going to take about 30 seconds because you just reminded me of a story I love from my childhood. There was a baseball player who was very popular in Cleveland named Rocky Colavito. And Colavito was invited a couple of times to the spring training camp and knew he wasn't going to make the team. He wasn't quite ready yet. But one year, a guy at the very end of his career was pitching there, and his name was Bob Feller. And Colavito had the presence of mind to go up to Feller and said, hey, would you just batting practice, throw me 25, 35 curveballs in a row? I'm doing okay hitting the fastball, but I'm having some difficulty hitting the curveball. And that's like a lesson we can all take. Yeah. That there are things that we're not the best at, that we're not good at, that we need to get better at.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. And I guess
Febbo, Vice President, Integrated Communications Department, Cuyahoga Community College. Thank you so much for all these pearls of wisdom and this time. And students, I hope you're taking notes and paying close attention, because this will definitely be on your second exam. So,
thank you.